When Moses ascended to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, the angels went to God and said, God, you should not give the Torah to mortals. They're not capable of observing it. God motioned to Moses and said, you answer them. So Moses asked the angels, the Torah says, you shall not steal. Does it apply to you? And they said, oh, no, we're angels, we don't steal. He said, the Torah says, you shall not lie. Does that apply to you? And they said, no, even if we want to lie, we cannot. We're angels. And he continued to ask them question after question until the angel had to relent and told God, you should give the Torah to mortals, to Moses. Unlike angels who are perfect, we are flawed. We have urges, we have temptations, we have a full range of emotions that need to be managed and regulated. God gave us the Torah because we are not angels. In the beginning of the pandemic, I did phenomenally well. I was on track to become the best version of myself ever. I read dozens of books. I cook elaborate meals from all over the world using herbs and spices that I had never heard of before. For 120 days, I ran 9 miles every single day, on weekends even more, without stopping, even though I knew it was wrong, but it was super me, I could do it. I didn't watch TV, except of the last season of Shtisel, which in my case is professional development. I took classes online. If anything, I felt a little guilty that I don't suffer like many other people. I was healthy, people around me, my family, friends were doing well. I was still employed by the temple. All my kids were at home. And because we decided to have all services from here, from this bima, I constantly was in touch with my colleagues and friends. In my case, it's the same thing. So we had our pod of friends, so I was not lonely. I was doing well, right? One morning around 4:30 a.m., that was the time I woke up, not by design, but the truth was that I have not slept more than 4 hours during that time. I did something that I shouldn't have done. I looked at my reflection in the mirror of the bathroom, and I was scared seeing the image that looked back at me. I looked so tired and exhausted. I have huge black circles under my eyes. It looked like the night before I dipped my swim goggles in black shoe polish and slept with them for the whole night. I was seriously underweight. I was not doing well. So why did I convince myself all the time that I was doing so well? I'm so good. We live in a culture that assumes that even when we suffer emotional pain, even when the situation is really rough, we should still have a positive attitude. We expect people to be happy, to be joyous, because being sad, feeling sad, being in pain is not something we should feel. We should have always a positive attitude, positive vibe. It's called toxic positivity. And then when we feel bad, when we are sad and in pain, we feel that we do something wrong because we're supposed to be happy. We have to teach ourselves how not to feel these negative emotions, so we feel even worse because now we feel that something is wrong with us. We feel guilty, we feel ashamed. And I think that that's the trap that I fell into. I believe that what I felt in general was languishing. Do you know what I'm talking about? I have a feeling that many of you felt similar things to what I did. Languishing is that when we feel joyless, we have this feeling of emptiness, of stagnation. Like every day looks like the day before, and we have a feeling that the next day will look exactly the same. We feel like we look at the world through a dirty windshield. Did you feel something like that during the pandemic, or still do? I definitely did. So, what did I do about it? The first thing was right. I admitted that I was not okay, and it was okay not to be okay. Almost 900 years ago, Maimonides told us that if we want to correct something about ourselves, if we want to fix something, to improve it, the first thing is hakara, getting to know that you have a problem. This is also the first step of the 12-step program. Admit that you have a problem. You cannot move on without it. I did it. Since I remember myself, I always believed, and still do, that no matter what, God is with me. That's my faith. I never believed, even as a child, that God is going to give me everything I want. But I did know that God is there, that even if I'm in pain, I'm disappointed, God is there to make my suffering a little bit more manageable. In the book of Psalms, the most famous psalm, I think, Psalm 23rd, tells us, even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. I think that many of us have been into this valley with a dark, thick shadow of death, of illness, of fear, of uncertainty hovering over us. God was there, helping. But only recently I realized that the verse does not say, I shall fear no evil because Adonai, or God, is with me, but because thou art with me, because you are. So you are can easily refer to God, but it can also refer to other people, to our small group of trusted family members and friends whom we know will be there for us. And I'm fortunate to have this group. These are the people to whom I can say what really bothers me without them having to say things like, oh, don't worry about it. Other people got it worse. This too shall pass. You know, to have friends like that who know what to say and, probably more important, what not to say. But here was my biggest mistake. I did not talk to any of them. I kept it in. And why? Because normally if I have a problem, I assume that my friends are doing fine, so they can deal with my problems. But during the pandemic, we all suffered. As my mom likes to say, everyone has his or her own pekale. We all have our pile of tzuras, our pile of troubles. And during the pandemic, we all had them, so I didn't want to dump my pile of troubles onto somebody else's and just double theirs. I thought it was not right, it was not fair. And I was completely wrong. If you remember one thing of what I'm saying tonight, please remember that thing. When we turn to our friends with problems, Not only we help ourselves, we help them for two main reasons. First of all, just think about yourself. When somebody comes to you, open their hearts to you, being vulnerable in your presence, you normally feel good. You feel trusted. You feel that you did something to own their trust. The other reason is when we share our problems with others, they can take a break from their own pile of troubles. They stop focusing on themselves, which is a good thing during a pandemic, and focusing on you. You're not troubling your friends when you reveal your pain to them. You're helping yourself, you're helping them. And I learned another important lesson. The portion that we will be reading tomorrow on Yom Kippur morning is called Nitzavim, and it has a beautiful line there. God tells the people of Israel, "Hine natati lefanecha hayom et habracha ve'et haklala, hachaim ve'et hamavet." Here I set before you today the blessing and the curse, life and death, and later on God says, "And you shall choose life." The way I always understood it was choosing life meant always become a better person. Always improve yourself. What I learned in the past year and a half is that sometimes choosing life means choosing life. There is a time to become a super version of yourself, and there is a time just to stay afloat, just to be able to put one foot in front of the other. Now, I recognize that some of you had a wonderful time and were able to do whatever you dreamed of, having the time, learn Chinese, organize your bookshelf, whatever it is. That was not my case. And when I gave myself a permission, not to be my best, but just to do the best I could under the circumstances, things became much better. I'll end with a little story that happened to me a few years ago. I signed up for a long triathlon. I practiced, I trained for many, many months before. Now, the first leg of a triathlon is a swim. And I had a goal, a time, that I wanted to finish the swimming. Now, if you've done it, you know how stressful it is. There's a bunch of guys in your age group at the shore of a lake. And when the siren goes off, everyone starts running towards the water. And when the water is too high, you start swimming. Even though I knew that I should not do it too fast, I was too fast. At one point, somebody kicked me or gave me an elbow. I swallowed water. I panicked. I got disoriented. You're looking at me like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. No, he does. And it was one of the only times in my life that I felt that there is a good chance that I will not get out of there alive. Luckily, in these events, they have kayaks and boats and people who are trained to spot swimmers in distress. I don't remember all the details, but at one point I remember I got close to a kayak, and the man on the kayak told me, just hold it with one hand. Don't get on it, because if you get on it, you'll get disqualified and the race is over. Take as much time as you need to regulate your breath, and then decide what you want to do. And I just did it. You know, when you're panicking, somebody tells you what to do, you do. I don't know how much time passed. Maybe half a minute, maybe 3 minutes, I have no idea. But finally, oxygen filled my brain. The panic subsided. I was able to see the buoys that marked the course of the swim, and I kept swimming. But at that point, I didn't swim fast. I didn't try to get a new PR, a new personal record. I just wanted to stay afloat. I just wanted to finish this leg of the swim and to find myself again on a stable ground, being ready to continue on my bicycle. There is time to constantly become better and better, and there is time to stay afloat, to do the best you can until the next day. It does not mean that you lose hope. You don't. There is still light at the end of the tunnel, but I recognize that I was still in the middle of the tunnel, and there was so much I was able to do. God gave us the Torah because we are imperfect, because we are only human. And it's okay. Shana Tova and Gmar Chatima Tova.